Marcus Thompson adjusted his red ceremonial tunic for the third time that morning, feeling the weight of curious stares from his fellow guards. At 32, he was older than most of the recruits who had joined the Queen's Guard alongside him. His weathered hands and the small scar above his left eyebrow told stories that his official record didn't reveal. The other guards whispered among themselves as they prepared for their monthly firearms training. James Patterson, a cocky 24-year-old from a military family, seemed to take particular pleasure in making jokes about Marcus's quiet demeanor. "Look at Thompson there," James snorted to his friends. "Bet he's never even held a real weapon before this job. Probably thinks that ceremonial sword is actually meant for fighting." Marcus said nothing, methodically checking his gear with the practiced movements of someone who had done this countless times before. His silence only seemed to encourage the younger guard's mockery. "I heard he worked some desk job before this," another guard chimed in. "Probably thinks standing still for hours makes him tough." The training sergeant, a burly man named Williams, called the group to attention. "Right then, gentlemen. Today we're heading to the range for quarterly assessments. For those of you who are new, this isn't about looking pretty in your uniform. When you're protecting the royal family, you need to be able to handle a weapon properly." As they boarded the transport vehicle, Marcus found himself sitting alone while the younger guards clustered together, their conversation peppered with boastful claims about their shooting abilities. James was particularly vocal about his marksmanship medals from basic training. "Watch and learn, old man," James called over to Marcus with a smirk. "I'll show you how it's really done." Marcus simply nodded politely, his gray eyes revealing nothing of the thoughts behind them. He had learned long ago that sometimes the best response was no response at all. The convoy moved through London's busy streets toward the military training facility, where each guard would be tested on their weapons proficiency. The irony wasn't lost on Marcus that these young men, so eager to prove themselves, had no idea they were sitting next to someone who had once been considered one of the most lethal marksmen in the British military. His past was locked away in classified files, known only to a select few in the intelligence community. As they approached the firing range, Marcus felt a familiar calm settle over him. The sounds of traffic faded into background noise as his mind automatically began calculating wind conditions, light angles, and distance measurements. Old habits died hard, especially ones that had kept him alive in some of the world's most dangerous places. The training facility loomed ahead, its concrete walls and serious atmosphere, a stark contrast to the ornate palaces where these men usually stood guard. Today would be different from their usual ceremonial duties. Today they would discover what each man was truly made of when it mattered most. Charlotte's eyes darted between Morrison and the suspicious maintenance worker as she quickly assessed the situation. The man had now moved closer to the main pathway that led directly to the Queen's private entrance, his toolbox positioned in a way that seemed more strategic than practical. She noticed he kept checking a device in his pocket, something that looked like a phone but could easily be a communication device or worse. The young princess took a deep breath and recalled her grandmother as lessons about observation and quick thinking. During their many walks through these same gardens, Queen Elizabeth had pointed out various security measures, explaining how important it was for every member of the royal family to be aware of their surroundings. "Even at your age, Charlotte," she had said, "you might one day notice something that could make a difference." Morrison continued his professional stance, but Charlotte could see that his training had also picked up on something unusual. His posture had shifted almost imperceptibly, and his eyes lingered a fraction longer on the maintenance worker than on other staff members moving through the area. However, his position and duties prevented him from investigating directly without cause or orders from his superiors. Charlotte knew she had to act quickly but carefully. She approached a nearby bench where she often sat to read during outdoor study sessions. From this position, she could observe both Morrison and the suspicious worker while appearing to be simply taking a rest. She pulled out her small notebook, the one she used for nature observations during science lessons, and began to write. But her real focus remained on the unfolding situation. The maintenance worker had now opened his toolbox and was removing items that Charlotte couldn't identify from her distance. However, his movements had become more urgent and he kept glancing at his watch. Most troubling of all, he had positioned himself so that he had a clear line of sight to several key windows of the castle, including those of the dining room where family meals were served. Charlotte's heart pounded as she realized the potential seriousness of the situation. She needed to communicate with Morrison immediately, but how could she do so without alerting the suspicious person or breaking the strict protocols that governed interactions between royals and their security detail? Then she remembered something from her studies about military history and communication during wartime. During one of her lessons about World War II, her tutor had explained how resistance fighters and military personnel used subtle signals to communicate important information without detection. These signals often appeared innocent to casual observers, but carried crucial meaning to those trained to recognize them. Charlotte realized she needed to create such a signal that Morrison would understand indicated danger. She stood up from the bench and began walking in a pattern that would appear casual but was actually carefully calculated. First, she moved toward the rose garden, then stopped abruptly as if she had forgotten something. She returned to the bench, picked up her notebook, and then began walking toward the fountain area again. However, instead of taking the direct path, she chose a route that would bring her within Morrison's peripheral vision. As she walked, Charlotte made sure to drop her notebook in a specific location, not accidentally, but in a way that would require her to stop and retrieve it directly in Morrison's line of sight. When she bent to pick up the notebook, she positioned herself so that Morrison could see her face clearly. Then, using a technique she had learned from watching her parents during formal diplomatic events, she made deliberate eye contact with the guard. The moment Morrison's eyes met hers, Charlotte performed a series of subtle actions that she hoped would convey urgency without alerting anyone else. She glanced deliberately toward the maintenance worker, then back to Morrison. She repeated this pattern 3 times, a number she remembered from her security briefings as indicating a high-priority situation. Then she touched her collar in a specific way, a gesture she had seen her father make during security discussions when he wanted to indicate concern about a person rather than a general situation. Morrison's training immediately recognized that something was unusual. Princess Charlotte was known for her intelligence and observational skills, and her behavior was clearly intentional rather than coincidental. More importantly, her eye contact and gestures were too specific and repeated to be accidental. His years of experience had taught him to pay attention to any communication from the royal family members, no matter how subtle. However, Morrison faced a significant dilemma. Royal protocol was extremely strict about his duties and limitations. He was positioned at his current location for specific security reasons, and abandoning his post without clear orders could potentially compromise other aspects of the security arrangement. Additionally, approaching Princess Charlotte directly would be a breach of protocol, unless she specifically requested his assistance or was in immediate danger. The maintenance worker had now moved even closer to the castle entrance and was assembling what appeared to be some kind of device. Charlotte could see that whatever he was doing was nearing completion, and her sense of urgency grew stronger. She needed to find a way to either get Morrison to act or to alert other security personnel without causing a scene that might trigger a dangerous response from the suspicious individual. Charlotte made a decision that demonstrated both her courage and her understanding of royal responsibility. She began walking directly toward Morrison, but in a way that would appear natural and proper. As she approached, she prepared to use the formal protocol for requesting assistance from security personnel, AE, procedure she had been taught but never expected to use in a real situation. The weight of her potential decision pressed down on her young shoulders. If she was wrong about the maintenance worker, she could cause an unnecessary security alert that would disrupt the garden party preparations and potentially embarrass her family. But if she was right, and she failed to act, the consequences could be far worse than any protocol violation. Charlotte had been raised to understand that with royal privilege came royal responsibility, and sometimes that responsibility required difficult choices. As Charlotte approached Morrison, she could see the internal conflict playing across his professionally composed features. His training told him to maintain his position and protocol, but his instincts as both a security professional and a human being recognized that the young princess was trying to communicate something important. The tension in the air was palpable, though to any casual observer, it would appear to be nothing more than a royal child taking a stroll through the castle grounds. The maintenance worker had now completed assembling his device, which Charlotte could see more clearly from her new position. It appeared to be some kind of small camera or recording equipment, positioned to capture activity from the Queen's private study window. Her heart raced as she realized her instincts had been correct. This was definitely not routine maintenance work. Morrison's years of training kicked in as he processed the situation. Princess Charlotte was known among the security staff as exceptionally bright and observant. Her tutors regularly reported on her analytical abilities, and she had even impressed intelligence briefers during her age-appropriate security education sessions. If she was attempting to communicate a security concern, it deserved serious consideration regardless of protocol complications. Charlotte stopped approximately 6 feet from Morrison, close enough to speak to him if necessary, but far enough to maintain the proper formal distance required by royal protocol. She held her notebook against her chest and looked directly at him, with an expression that conveyed both urgency and respect for his position. Then she did something that demonstrated her sophisticated understanding of royal communication. Instead of speaking immediately, Charlotte performed a formal curtsy, not the casual acknowledgement she might give to familiar staff, but the full proper curtsy reserved for formal occasions. This action served multiple purposes. It showed respect for Morrison's position, it indicated that what she was about to say should be taken seriously, and it provided a formal framework that would allow Morrison to respond appropriately without breaking protocol. "Sergeant Morrison," Charlotte said in a clear, quiet voice that carried just far enough for him to hear clearly, "I believe there may be something you should observe near the fountain maintenance area." Her words were carefully chosen to convey urgency without creating alarm, and to provide Morrison with actionable information rather than requiring him to guess at her concerns. Morrison's response was immediate but subtle. His posture straightened slightly, and his eyes performed a quick but thorough scan of the area Charlotte had indicated. His training allowed him to take in details quickly, and what he saw confirmed Charlotte's concerns. The maintenance workers' positioning, equipment, and behavior all raised red flags that Morrison's experience immediately recognized as potentially threatening. However, Morrison now faced the most challenging decision of his career. Royal protocol was absolutely clear about his duties and limitations. He was not authorized to leave his post without direct orders from his commanding officer, or without witnessing a clear and immediate threat to royal safety. Investigating suspicious activity was the responsibility of other security teams, not guards in his position. Breaking protocol could result in serious disciplinary action or even dismissal from royal service. But Morrison also understood that security protocols existed to protect the royal family, not to create bureaucratic obstacles that could prevent the identification and response to real threats. Princess Charlotte's warning, combined with his own observations, suggested that waiting for proper channels could allow a security breach to occur. The maintenance worker had finished his setup and was now pulling out what appeared to be a small electronic device. Morrison could see him manipulating controls and pointing the device toward the castle windows. The man's behavior had become increasingly furtive, and he was clearly trying to avoid detection by other security personnel in the area. Morrison made his decision with the swift judgment that had earned him his position. He stepped slightly closer to Charlotte and spoke in a low, professional tone that conveyed both respect and urgency. "Your Highness, thank you for bringing this to my attention. Please return to the castle immediately and find Miss Anderson or your protection officer. Tell them that Sergeant Morrison requests immediate backup for a Code Yellow situation in the east. Garden Fountain area. Code Yellow was security, terminology for a potential threat that required investigation, but had not yet been confirmed as dangerous. By using this specific language, Morrison was providing Charlotte with the exact words that would trigger the appropriate security response, while also giving her a clear role in resolving the situation. Charlotte nodded once, understanding immediately the importance of Morrison's instructions. However, before she could move toward the castle, the maintenance worker looked up from his device and made direct eye contact with both of them. The expression on his face changed instantly from focused concentration to alarm, and Charlotte could see that he had realized his activities had been noticed. The man's reaction confirmed Morrison's worst fears. Instead of the confused or apologetic expression of an innocent maintenance worker caught in a misunderstanding, the individual displayed the calculated alertness of someone whose covert operation had been compromised. His hands moved quickly to his equipment, not to pack it away, but to manipulate it in ways that suggested he was trying to complete his mission before being stopped. Morrison's training took over completely. Without breaking eye contact with the suspicious individual, he spoke quickly to Charlotte. "Your Highness, please walk directly to the castle entrance. Do not run, but move with purpose. Find the first security officer you encounter, and repeat exactly what I told you." Charlotte felt a surge of adrenaline, but also a strong sense of pride that her observations had been correct and that she had been able to help protect her family and home. However, she also realized that the situation was now moving beyond her ability to help, and her most important contribution would be to follow Morrison's instructions precisely. As Charlotte began walking toward the castle, Morrison faced the most critical moment of his career. The suspicious maintenance worker was now clearly preparing to leave the area, and Morrison had to decide whether to maintain his post as protocol required or to take action that could prevent a security breach but would certainly result in serious consequences for his career. The weight of protecting the royal family, not just their physical safety, but their privacy and security, rested on his shoulders. Every second of delay could allow the unauthorized surveillance or worse to be completed, but acting without proper authorization could end his service and potentially compromise other security measures he wasn't aware of. Morrison watched as Charlotte walked purposefully toward the castle, her small figure moving with the dignity and composure that had been instilled in her from birth. Even under pressure, she maintained the proper pace and demeanor expected of a royal family member, but Morrison could see the urgency in her stride. He felt a moment of profound respect for the young princess who had handled the situation with remarkable maturity and intelligence. The maintenance worker, now clearly aware that his activities had been observed, began hastily packing his equipment. However, instead of the hurried movements of someone caught in innocent wrongdoing, his actions were methodical and practiced, suggesting he had planned for the possibility of discovery. Morrison noted that the man was being careful not to damage his device, indicating it contained valuable information or was expensive equipment that he couldn't afford to lose. Morrison's internal struggle intensified as he watched the situation develop. Every fiber of his training screamed at him to maintain his position and follow protocol. Royal guards were positioned strategically based on comprehensive security assessments, and abandoning his post could create vulnerabilities elsewhere. His commanding officers had been absolutely clear that guards should never leave their assignments without explicit orders. Regardless of the circumstances, however, Morrison also understood that protocols were created to protect the royal family, not to create rigid barriers that prevented effective security responses. The suspicious individual was clearly preparing to leave, and once he departed the castle grounds, identifying and apprehending him would become exponentially more difficult. Moreover, if he had successfully gathered intelligence or planted surveillance equipment, the damage to royal security could be irreparable. As these thoughts raced through Morrison's mind, he noticed something that made his blood run cold. The maintenance worker wasn't just packing equipment, he was placing a small device against the fountain's base, in a location that would be nearly invisible to casual inspection, but would provide an excellent vantage point for long-term surveillance of the castle's east wing. This wasn't just unauthorized photography. It was the installation of permanent surveillance equipment. Morrison's decision crystallized in that moment. Protocol was important, but the core mission of protecting the royal family took precedence over procedural compliance. He had witnessed the placement of what appeared to be surveillance equipment, which constituted a clear and immediate threat to royal security. His duty was to prevent that threat, regardless of the personal consequences. Charlotte had reached the castle's main entrance and immediately spotted Inspector Davies, the senior protection officer who oversaw security for the younger royals. Davies was a veteran of 25 years in royal protection, and his experience had taught him to take any security concerns seriously, especially when they came from members of the royal family who had been trained to recognize unusual situations. "Inspector Davies," Charlotte said, approaching him with the formal manner she had been taught for official communications, "Sergeant Morrison requested that I inform you of a code yellow situation in the East Garden fountain area. He requested immediate backup." Her voice was steady, but Davies could hear the underlying tension that indicated the seriousness of the situation. Davies' response was immediate and professional. He understood that Charlotte would not deliver such a message unless she had been specifically instructed to do so, and Morrison would not use official security terminology unless he had identified a genuine concern. Davies activated his radio and began coordinating with other security teams while simultaneously questioning Charlotte for additional details. "Your Highness, can you tell me exactly what you observed?" Davies asked as he led Charlotte to a secure area inside the castle where their conversation couldn't be overheard. His manner was gentle but focused, understanding that extracting accurate information from a young witness required both professionalism and patience. Charlotte provided a clear and detailed account of her observations, describing the maintenance workers' unusual behavior, his equipment, and the timing of Morrison's request for backup. Davies was impressed by the accuracy and relevance of her observations, recognizing that her security training had prepared her well for this situation. Her report contained exactly the kind of specific details that would allow security teams to respond effectively. Meanwhile, Morrison had made his fateful decision. He could see that the maintenance worker had completed installing his device and was preparing to leave the area. Morrison knew that once the individual departed, the opportunity to apprehend him and prevent the security breach would be lost. He also realized that the device, now hidden at the fountain's base, could continue gathering intelligence indefinitely unless it was discovered and removed. Morrison stepped away from his assigned position and began walking purposefully toward the fountain area. His movement was controlled and professional, designed to avoid alarming the suspicious individual while closing the distance between them. As he walked, Morrison activated his personal radio and transmitted a brief message to security headquarters. "This is Morrison, East Garden position. Investigating potential code yellow. Requesting immediate backup to fountain area." The maintenance worker noticed Morrison's approach, and his demeanor changed immediately. Instead of the casual confidence he had displayed while working, he now showed the alertness of someone who recognized a security threat. The man quickly shouldered his toolbox and began walking rapidly toward the nearest exit from the castle grounds. Morrison increased his pace, but he faced a tactical dilemma. If he attempted to detain the individual without backup, he could be overpowered or the situation could escalate dangerously. However, if he allowed the person to leave, valuable evidence would be lost, and the individual could potentially return or share intelligence with others who might pose threats to royal security. As Morrison closed the distance, he could see other security personnel responding to his radio call and Charlotte's report to Inspector Davies. The coordinated response demonstrated the effectiveness of the royal protection system when all elements worked together. However, Morrison also knew that his decision to abandon his post would require explanation and justification to his superiors. The maintenance worker, now clearly in flight mode, dropped his casual pretense entirely and began running toward the castle gates. Morrison pursued, maintaining radio contact with backup teams and providing updates on the individual's location and direction of travel. The chase had begun, and the outcome would determine not only the security of the royal family but also Morrison's future in royal service. Morrison's radio crackled with updates from Inspector Davies and other security teams converging on the area. The coordinated response was impressive, but Morrison knew that the critical moments were now, while the suspicious individual was still on castle grounds, and the surveillance device could be located and removed before it transmitted any information to external sources. The chase across Windsor Castle grounds became a carefully coordinated operation, as Morrison's radio calls brought additional security personnel into action. Inspector Davies had immediately activated the castle's security protocols, which included securing all exits and establishing communication with local police forces. The maintenance worker, now running at full speed toward the main gates, clearly understood that his window for escape was rapidly closing. Morrison maintained pursuit while providing continuous updates through his radio. His training in tactical operations proved invaluable as he tracked the fleeing individual while simultaneously coordinating with backup teams, positioning themselves at strategic points around the castle perimeter. The suspect's route toward the main gates was predictable, but Morrison knew that experienced operatives often had backup escape plans. As the pursuit continued, Morrison's radio crackled with an update from Inspector Davies. "Morrison, we've located and secured the device at the fountain. Technical team is en route for analysis. Continue pursuit. Backup teams are in position at all exits. This news provided Morrison with crucial information. The immediate threat to royal security had been contained, but apprehending the individual remained important for understanding the scope of the security breach. The maintenance worker reached the area near the main gates but found his escape route blocked by security personnel who had positioned themselves in response to Morrison's alerts. Realizing his primary escape route was compromised, the individual suddenly changed direction and headed toward the service areas of the castle, where delivery vehicles and maintenance staff typically entered and exited. Morrison adjusted his pursuit accordingly, radioing the new direction to his backup teams. However, he also noticed something concerning about the suspect's behavior. Instead of showing the panic or desperation typical of someone caught in criminal activity, the individual was moving with the calculated precision of someone with professional training. This observation suggested that the security breach might be more serious than initially apparent. Charlotte, safe inside the castle with Inspector Davies, watched through a window as the dramatic events unfolded on the ground she had walked through peacefully. Just minutes earlier, Davies had positioned her in a secure location where she could observe the resolution of the situation she had helped initiate, understanding that her involvement deserved acknowledgement and closure. "Your Highness," Davies said as they watched the security teams coordinate their response, "your observations and quick thinking may have prevented a serious security breach. The device we found at the fountain was sophisticated, surveillance equipment that could have compromised royal privacy and security for an extended period." His words carried both gratitude and respect for Charlotte's contribution to protecting her family. Charlotte felt a complex mix of emotions as she watched the situation unfold. Pride in having correctly identified a threat and helped protect her family was tempered by concern for Morrison, who she realized had risked his career to act on her warning. She understood enough about royal protocol to know that his decision to leave his post was a serious breach that could have significant consequences. The maintenance worker, finding his escape routes increasingly limited, made a desperate decision that revealed the true nature of his mission. Instead of surrendering or attempting to hide, he pulled out a mobile phone and began rapidly typing what appeared to be a message. Morrison, close enough to observe this action, immediately understood the implications. The individual was attempting to transmit information or alert accomplices before being apprehended. Morrison accelerated his pursuit, knowing that preventing the transmission of intelligence was now as important as apprehending the suspect. He radioed this new development to security headquarters. "Suspect attempting to transmit information via mobile device. Request immediate signal jamming protocols and technical support to prevent data transmission." The response from security headquarters was swift and comprehensive. Electronic countermeasures were activated to block mobile phone signals in the immediate area, and technical specialists began monitoring for any attempted data transmissions from the castle grounds. The sophisticated nature of the security response demonstrated the serious manner in which Royal Protection Services treated any potential breach. As Morrison closed the final distance to the suspect, backup security officers converged from multiple directions, creating an inescapable perimeter around the individual. Faced with certain capture, and unable to complete his data transmission due to the signal jamming, the maintenance worker finally stopped running and assumed a defensive posture that suggested professional training in combat or resistance techniques. Morrison approached cautiously, understanding that a cornered operative with professional training could still pose a significant threat. His radio provided guidance from tactical specialists. "Morrison, maintain safe distance until backup officers are in position. Suspect profile suggests possible military or intelligence training. Do not attempt solo apprehension." The final confrontation took place near the castle's service entrance, where the maintenance worker was surrounded by 6 security officers led by Morrison. The suspect's surrender was professional and controlled, lacking the emotional distress typical of civilian criminals. This behavior confirmed Morrison's suspicions about the individual's background and suggested that the security breach was part of a larger, more sophisticated operation. Inspector Davies arrived at the scene as the suspect was being secured and searched. The search revealed additional sophisticated equipment, including encrypted communication devices and what appeared to be detailed plans of castle security arrangements. The discovery of these materials elevated the incident from a simple trespassing case to a potential espionage operation targeting the royal family. Morrison felt a mixture of relief and apprehension as the immediate crisis concluded. His quick action and Princess Charlotte's initial warning had successfully prevented a serious security breach, but he knew that his violation of protocol would require explanation and justification to his superiors. The outcome of the incident would likely determine whether his career in royal service continued or ended. Charlotte watched from her secure position as the suspect was led away and the various security teams began their post-incident procedures. She understood that her role in the day's events had demonstrated both the importance of vigilance and the effectiveness of the security training she had received. However, she also worried about the consequences Morrison might face for his decision to act on her warning. Inspector Davies, recognizing Charlotte's concern, spoke reassuringly. "Your Highness, Sergeant Morrison's actions today were exemplary. He recognized a genuine threat and responded appropriately to protect royal security. His decision to act on your information was correct and will be acknowledged as such in our report." These words provided Charlotte with the assurance that Morrison's career would not be harmed by his decision to break protocol in service of protecting her family. The chase across Windsor Castle grounds became a carefully coordinated operation, as Morrison's radio calls brought additional security personnel into action. Inspector Davies had immediately activated the castle's security protocols, which included securing all exits and establishing communication with local police forces. The maintenance worker, now running at full speed toward the main gates, clearly understood that his window for escape was rapidly closing. Morrison maintained pursuit while providing continuous updates through his radio. His training in tactical operations proved invaluable as he tracked the fleeing individual while simultaneously coordinating with backup teams, positioning themselves at strategic points around the castle perimeter. The suspect's route toward the main gates was predictable, but Morrison knew that experienced operatives often had backup escape plans. As the pursuit continued, Morrison's radio crackled with an update from Inspector Davies. "Morrison, we've located and secured the device at the fountain. Technical team is en route for analysis. Continue pursuit. Backup teams are in position at all exits." This news provided Morrison with crucial information. The immediate threat to royal security had been contained, but apprehending the individual remained important for understanding the scope of the security breach. The maintenance worker reached the area near the main gates but found his escape route blocked by security personnel who had positioned themselves in response to Morrison's alerts. Realizing his primary escape route was compromised, the individual suddenly changed direction and headed toward the service areas of the castle, where delivery vehicles and maintenance staff typically entered and exited. Morrison adjusted his pursuit accordingly, radioing the new direction to his backup teams. However, he also noticed something concerning about the suspect's behavior. Instead of showing the panic or desperation typical of someone caught in criminal activity, the individual was moving with the calculated precision of someone with professional training. This observation suggested that the security breach might be more serious than initially apparent. Charlotte, safe inside the castle with Inspector Davies, watched through a window as the dramatic events unfolded on the grounds she had walked through peacefully just minutes earlier. Davies had positioned her in a secure location where she could observe the resolution of the situation she had helped initiate, understanding that her involvement deserved acknowledgement and closure. "Your Highness," Davies said as they watched the security teams coordinate their response, "your observations and quick thinking may have prevented a serious security breach. The device we found at the fountain was sophisticated, surveillance equipment that could have compromised royal privacy and security for an extended period." His words carried both gratitude and respect for Charlotte's contribution to protecting her family. Charlotte felt a complex mix of emotions as she watched the situation unfold. Pride in having correctly identified a threat and helped protect her family was tempered by concern for Morrison, who she realized had risked his career to act on her warning. She understood enough about royal protocol to know that his decision to leave his post was a serious breach that could have significant consequences. The maintenance worker, Finding his escape routes increasingly limited, made a desperate decision that revealed the true nature of his mission. Instead of surrendering or attempting to hide, he pulled out a mobile phone and began rapidly typing what appeared to be a message. Morrison, close enough to observe this action, immediately understood the implications. The individual was attempting to transmit information or alert accomplices before being apprehended. Morrison accelerated his pursuit, knowing that preventing the transmission of intelligence was now as important as apprehending the suspect. He radioed this new development to security headquarters. Suspect attempting to transmit information via mobile device. Request immediate signal jamming protocols and technical support to prevent data transmission. The response from security headquarters was swift and comprehensive. Electronic countermeasures were activated to block mobile phone signals in the immediate area, and technical specialists began monitoring for any attempted data transmissions from the castle grounds. The sophisticated nature of the security response demonstrated the serious manner in which Royal Protection Services treated any potential breach. As Morrison closed the final distance to the suspect, backup security officers converged from multiple directions, creating an inescapable perimeter around the individual. Faced with certain capture and unable to complete his data transmission due to the signal jamming, the maintenance worker finally stopped running and assumed a defensive posture that suggested professional training in combat or resistance techniques. Morrison approached cautiously, understanding that a cornered operative with professional training could still pose a significant threat. His radio provided guidance from tactical specialists. Morrison, maintain safe distance until backup officers are in position. Suspect profile suggests possible military or intelligence training. Do not attempt solo apprehension. The final confrontation took place near the castle's service entrance, where the maintenance worker was surrounded by 6 security officers led by Morrison. The suspect's surrender was professional and controlled, lacking the emotional distress typical of civilian criminals. This behavior confirmed Morrison's suspicions about the individual's background and suggested that the security breach was part of a larger, more sophisticated operation. Inspector Davies arrived at the scene as the suspect was being secured and searched. The search revealed additional sophisticated equipment, including encrypted communication devices and what appeared to be detailed plans of castle security arrangements. The discovery of these materials elevated the incident from a simple trespassing case to a potential espionage operation targeting the royal family. Morrison felt a mixture of relief and apprehension as the immediate crisis concluded. His quick action and Princess Charlotte's initial warning had successfully prevented a serious security breach, but he knew that his violation of protocol would require explanation and justification to his superiors. The outcome of the incident would likely determine whether his career in royal service continued or ended. Charlotte watched from her secure position as the suspect was led away and the various security teams began their post-incident procedures. She understood that her role in the day's events had demonstrated both the importance of vigilance and the effectiveness of the security training she had received. However, she also worried about the consequences Morrison might face for his decision to act on her warning. Inspector Davies, recognizing Charlotte's concern, spoke reassuringly. "Your Highness, Sergeant Morrison's actions today were exemplary. He recognized a genuine threat and responded appropriately to protect royal security. His decision to act on your information was correct and will be acknowledged as such in our report." These words provided Charlotte with the assurance that Morrison's career would not be harmed by his decision to break protocol in service of protecting her family. The aftermath of the security incident brought a flurry of activity to Windsor Castle, as various investigation teams and security specialists arrived to analyze what had transpired. Morrison found himself at the center of a comprehensive debriefing process, where every detail of his actions and decisions would be scrutinized by senior security officials, royal protection specialists, and potentially even intelligence services. Commander Sarah Phillips, the senior officer responsible for royal protection operations, arrived within 30 minutes of the suspect's apprehension. Her reputation for thoroughness and fairness was well known throughout the royal security services, and her presence indicated the serious manner in which the incident was being treated. Phillips immediately began coordinating with various departments to ensure that all aspects of the security breach were properly investigated and documented. Morrison, was asked to provide a detailed account of events, beginning with Princess Charlotte's initial approach and continuing through the successful apprehension of the suspect. As he recounted the story, Morrison was careful to emphasize Charlotte's sophisticated understanding of security protocols and her professional manner in communicating her concerns. He wanted to ensure that her contribution was properly recognized and that she wouldn't face any criticism for her involvement in the incident. The technical analysis of the surveillance device found at the fountain revealed information that elevated the incident's significance considerably. The equipment was military-grade technology, capable of intercepting electronic communications and capturing high-resolution images and audio from significant distances. More concerning was the discovery that the device had been programmed to transmit data to external servers, suggesting a well-organized intelligence operation rather than simple unauthorized surveillance. Charlotte remained in the secure area with Inspector Davies, but she was also asked to provide her account of the events. Her detailed observations and clear recollection of the suspicious individual's behavior impressed the investigating officers, who noted that her security training had prepared her well to identify and report potential threats. Her testimony provided crucial details about the timeline and the suspect's activities before Morrison's intervention. Commander Phillips reviewed Morrison's account with particular attention to his decision to abandon his assigned position. In most circumstances, such a breach of protocol would result in serious disciplinary action, potentially including dismissal from royal service. However, the unique circumstances of the incident, combined with the successful prevention of a sophisticated security breach, required careful consideration of both the violation and its justification. The interrogation of the captured suspect, conducted by intelligence specialists, revealed that the operation had been planned for several weeks and involved detailed reconnaissance of castle security procedures. The individual, whose identity was being verified through international databases, had successfully infiltrated the castle grounds by posing as a legitimate maintenance contractor. This revelation prompted immediate reviews of contractor vetting procedures and security clearance protocols. Morrison's radio communications during the incident were analyzed to understand his decision-making process and tactical choices. The recordings demonstrated his professional competence and clear thinking under pressure, as well as his appropriate use of security protocols once he had decided to act. These communications would be crucial evidence in determining whether his actions were justified and exemplary or constituted a dangerous breach of protocol. As the investigation continued, word of the incident began to reach other members of the royal family. Prince William and Catherine were briefed on the situation and expressed both concern about the security breach and pride in Charlotte's mature response to a dangerous situation. Their reaction would be important in determining how the incident was officially characterized and what consequences, if any, Morrison might face. Charlotte found herself in the unusual position of being both a witness to a security incident and a participant in its resolution. Inspector Davies explained to her that her observations and actions had been crucial in preventing what could have been a serious compromise of royal privacy and security. However, he also emphasized that such situations were rare, and that her normal response to security concerns should always be to immediately alert her protection officers. The investigation revealed that the suspect had been conducting surveillance for at least 3 days before his discovery, successfully photographing and recording various aspects of castle operations and royal family activities. The sophisticated nature of his operation suggested connections to organized crime or foreign intelligence services, making his apprehension and the prevention of further data transmission critically important for national security. Morrison was called before a review board consisting of Commander Phillips, Inspector Davies, and senior representatives from Royal Protection Services. The purpose of this review was to evaluate his actions, determine whether disciplinary measures were warranted, and assess any changes needed to security protocols based on the incident. Morrison entered the review knowing that his career hung in the balance, but confident that his actions had been necessary and appropriate. The review board examined every aspect of Morrison's decision-making process, from his initial observations of the suspicious individual to his choice to act on Princess Charlotte's warning, despite protocol restrictions. They also considered the potential consequences if Morrison had followed strict protocol and waited for proper authorization, which would likely have allowed the suspect to complete his mission and escape undetected. Commander Phillips questioned Morrison extensively about his assessment of Princess Charlotte's warning and his decision to trust her judgment over strict adherence to positional protocols. Morrison's responses demonstrated his understanding of the balance between following procedures and adapting to unexpected situations that posed genuine threats to royal security. Commander Phillips concluded the review board proceedings with a decision that would reshape both Morrison's career and royal security protocols for years to come. After 3 hours of deliberation, examining witness statements, technical evidence, and expert analysis of the security breach, the board reached a unanimous conclusion that surprised everyone present, including Morrison himself. "Sergeant Morrison," Commander Phillips announced formally, "while your decision to abandon your assigned position constituted a technical violation of standing protocols, your actions prevented a sophisticated intelligence operation that could have compromised royal security for months or potentially years. Your quick assessment of Princess Charlotte's warning, combined with your professional response to a genuine threat, exemplifies the highest standards of Royal Protection Service." The relief on Morrison's face was evident, but Commander Phillips continued with even more significant news. "Furthermore, this incident has highlighted the need for more flexible response protocols that allow experienced guards to act on credible intelligence without waiting for authorization that might allow threats to materialize. You will be promoted to senior sergeant and assigned to develop new rapid response guidelines that balance protocol adherence with tactical flexibility." The promotion was unprecedented for someone who had technically violated protocols, but the board recognized that Morrison's actions had prevented a serious security breach and demonstrated exactly the kind of initiative and judgment that royal protection required. His experience would now be used to train other guards and improve overall security. Effectiveness. Princess Charlotte was brought before the review board to receive official recognition for her role in preventing the security breach. Commander Phillips addressed her with the formal respect due to a member of the royal family, but also with genuine appreciation for her contribution. "Your Royal Highness, your observational skills and mature response to a security concern have protected not only your family, but potentially national security interests. Your training and instincts served you exceptionally well." Charlotte accepted the recognition graciously, but her response demonstrated the wisdom and character that had impressed adults throughout her young life. "Thank you, Commander Phillips, but I believe Sergeant Morrison deserves the real credit. I only reported what I observed. He made the difficult decision to act on that information, knowing it might affect his career. His courage protected all of us." The investigation's final report revealed the full scope of the intelligence operation that had been thwarted. The suspect, identified as a foreign operative with connections to organized crime networks, had been tasked with gathering detailed information about royal family routines, security procedures, and castle vulnerabilities. The surveillance equipment he had installed could have transmitted this information for months without detection, potentially enabling future attacks or security breaches. The technical analysis of the suspect's equipment revealed that he had already gathered significant intelligence about castle operations, including photographs of security checkpoints, recordings of guard communications, and detailed maps of royal family movement patterns. The prevention of this information's transmission to external sources was considered a major victory for national security services. Morrison's promotion ceremony took place 3 weeks later in the presence of Prince William, who personally thanked both Morrison and Charlotte for their roles in protecting royal security. The prince's remarks emphasized the importance of vigilance, quick thinking, and the courage to act appropriately when situations demanded decisive response. Charlotte was also honored for her contribution, receiving a special commendation from the Royal Protection Services and a personal letter of thanks from her grandmother's private secretary, acknowledging that her actions honored the late Queen's legacy of service and protection of the monarchy. The recognition meant more to Charlotte than any formal award, because it connected her actions to the values her grandmother had instilled in her. The incident led to comprehensive reviews of royal security protocols, contractor vetting procedures, and communication systems. Morrison was appointed to lead a special committee tasked with developing new guidelines that would allow security personnel to respond more effectively to emerging threats while maintaining the strict standards required for royal protection. The changes implemented as a result of the incident included enhanced background checks for all maintenance and service personnel, improved surveillance detection equipment, and new protocols for guards to communicate and respond to potential threats identified by royal family members. These changes strengthened overall security while ensuring that future Princess Charlotte's and Sergeant Morrison's could work together effectively to protect the monarchy. Morrison's career flourished in his new role, where his experience in balancing protocol requirements with tactical necessity made him an exceptional trainer and policy developer. His story became a case study used in royal protection training, demonstrating how experienced, judgment, and appropriate risk-taking could serve the ultimate mission of protecting the royal family. Charlotte continued her education with a deeper appreciation for the complexity of royal security and her own responsibilities as a member of the royal family. The incident had shown her that even young royals could contribute meaningfully to their family's protection. But it had also reinforced the importance of working within established systems and trusting the professionals dedicated to their safety. Years later, as Charlotte grew into her role as a senior member of the royal family, she would often reflect on the day she and Sergeant Morrison worked together to prevent a security breach. The incident had taught her valuable lessons about observation, courage, and the importance of clear communication in critical situations. More importantly, it had demonstrated that protecting the monarchy was a shared responsibility that sometimes required individuals to make difficult decisions in service of a greater good. The story became part of Windsor Castle's unofficial history, passed down among security personnel as an example of how effective royal protection required not just adherence to protocols, but also the wisdom to recognize when circumstances demanded adaptive responses. Morrison and Charlotte's successful collaboration had set a new standard for how royal family members and their protectors could work together to ensure the safety and security of the British monarchy.